Speech.
Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm trying to pull up the YouTube. Oh, finally. Okay.
Good evening,
Kenneth.
Oh, wow. Now I see myself. Let me turn the volume down. Go. Hi.
Hello.
I just realized I forgot one thing. Hold on one second.
Is that your bumblebee?
Yes.
It's his microphone. It's called a bumblebee mic.
Huh. Is that the name of the brand?
Yeah. It's on sale on Amazon. I'm thinking of getting a mic, so I was finding out what everyone's favorite was.
Oh, okay. How much is it? Yeah.
I think it was $80 something, but I mean marked down from $160. Then I found a cheaper one that people liked it better. So I'll tell you tomorrow what I found if you want. I'll like just.
Oh yeah, no. Let me know. I don't know whether you know Ida Cullen.
You what?
Do you know Ida Cullen, the yoga teacher?
No.
Okay, I'm helping her set up her studio, so she needed some recommendations on the microphone. So, this could be something that I could recommend her if this is good.
There's a lot of good ones out on the market. A lot of people that do voice work like this, and it's got certain features. So I mean,
hold it up. Let's see the yellow base.
Okay, hold on a minute. So I can see myself. So it's big. It does take up a fair amount of desk space, but it's also real easy to move, and you don't have to feel like you have to treat it delicately. It's got a few different settings. I've got it set on neutral, but there's actually a voice setting. I don't know if it makes any difference, but does my voice sound better in the voice setting?
Does it do anything about your political opinions?
And it also, and then the front of it looks like this.
Oh, wow. Honeycomb. Look, it's like kind of honeycomb-like.
Yeah. But anyway, you can see pictures of it on Amazon, and they have a few different models. I mean, I also have a backup mic, which is the Blue Yeti that everyone has, but I find this one is a little bit better in terms of voice. But who knows? A lot of it depends on the internet
and who you ask
connection and whatnot. Oh, yeah, 6:31. We're missing the Muhurta for the moment.
Thank you, Kenneth, for joining. So it's so good to see you in your beautiful setup of the office.
Thank you.
So really nice. So we will get started with our official professional month chanting lady, and there she is. So Rani ji.
Hello. Namaste, Kenneth ji. Good evening, everyone.
Namaste.
Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu. Sahana Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Rani ji. Now we will get started. So Kenneth, we are here to hear more from you with your beautiful session, beautiful topic. And I am really curious to know about this because I have absolutely no idea about the topic which you're going to speak today. So the floor is all yours. We are here to hear from you. And, with that, I will let people have an interactive session, ask your questions in between. And now it's all yours.
All right, beautiful. So, the nature of these evening sessions is to be a bit more informal and talking back and forth. I also picked a topic that I thought a lot of, many people in the audience would know, and maybe a lot of people don't know anything. So I guess I need to get kind of a reading on, because I don't want to bore people. So I have a little tiny presentation. I have charts for us to look at. I can gear it towards people that don't know anything about Muhurta and picking auspicious time. I mean, the whole thing is just very simple explanation of things. And I can share my screen, but maybe oh wait, I want to see the chat box. Maybe if you have a question, or if what I'm talking about is old hat, we can just advance into the actual, wait, no, I can't, my camera's blocking my view. Okay. And we can just advance into the example charts, because I think there's no better teacher than actually us trying to figure things out. So I'll do a really brief presentation. Brief depending on how many questions get asked. And then we'll just look at some Muhurtas, some that I actually did for clients, some Muhurtas that I'm calling accidental Muhurtas. I happen to know the moment that certain things happen, and we can all take a look at it and see if we can interpret how we would interpret it. But before and as everyone knows, I'm Kenneth Miller and I live in San Diego, and I'm happy to be participating in this. But you know what? I'm just a student of astrology, like everyone is, because we never know enough. But I am happy to share with you what I do know and the experience in dealing with clients who ask you to elect auspicious times for things. If you're a Western astrologer that somehow stumbled into the YouTube room, Muhurta is electional astrology, and it's called electional astrology in the West. Okay, so without further ado, and namaste to everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to even arrive here. And now I will share my screen, which will be this. Oh yeah, it always robs from me. Oh, there's everyone. Okay.
Yes.
Move everyone over here. Just excuse me while I do a few screen real estate things here. Okay. I should just do a quick search of the audience to see how nervous I should be. Okay. Oh boy. Charlotte Benson is here. All right. Okay. You don't need to know that. So I actually designed this talk originally for Western astrologers, because they have their own tradition of electing auspicious times. But this is one area where Western astrology and Indian astrology can be completely different because of the way Indians conceptualize time and the different qualities time have. Often, according to the Western rules, there'll just be no good time. You need to open your donut shop in the next 2 weeks, and there's just no good time in Western astrology. But in Indian astrology, there will be, because we just have more tools and we look at the world a little differently, and often there is a good time. So I call this so this is real basic stuff, but I'll go through it really fast. And again, I'm assuming a lot of the audience may know that the Indian concept of time traditionally has these minute breakdowns. It's this really, if you've ever studied the history of zero, you realize that the West fought against the concept of zero for so long. I mean, really until a few hundred years ago, because this, Aristotle had this notion that nature abhorred a vacuum. And I remember reading Al-Biruni's India, which was a record of his travels in the year 1000. And he's like, oh, these Indians, they have these giant numbers. They just don't make any sense. And, you know, zero, you know, nothingness. How can that be? Blah, blah, blah. So, you know, the Indian culture has always been comfortable with infinity and non-being, and in any event, you have these really tiny, minuscule things of time, most of which I'm not going to talk about tonight because they're not really pertinent to Muhurta. But one of the things that is that I don't see a lot of people talk about is a section of time called Nadikas, which are 24 minutes long about, and they have different qualities. And so often when I'm fine tuning, like I figure out, okay, here's the day, here's the couple of hours, I will actually look at the Nadikas. They're also called Gadikas, I believe, depending on where in India you are. They have two names, and I should have put the second one there. I apologize. But they're sort of like, if you know about planetary hours in the West, this is another little chunk of time that has a quality to it that often will like kind of, you know, seal the deal. Muhurta is an interesting practice because you never really know how effective or ineffective it was, because, I mean, if all goes well, was that you elected a good time and that helped, or was it just the hard work of the person that made it a success? However, I find the fact that clients come back for more dates tells me that, you know, I must be doing something right, or they're feeling they're getting value out of it. Here's a picture of an old water clock, which is how people used to tell time. You'd fill this with water and it would drain out. And this one measures, this actually tells you what the Sanskrit definition of Nadika is, which is the time it takes a certain quantity of water to pass out through something like this. And it's about 24 minutes. Okay. Again, everyone knows the Panchang, the 5 limbs. So I will just kind of race over this. Varna is the day. We know that every day of the week is associated with a planet. So today is Saturday, Saturn day. Normally I'd be wearing black on Saturday because that's one of the colors of Saturn, but it's a special day, so I'm wearing white today. And then there's Sunday, the sun's day, moon day, Mars day, all the way through the week. So every day is associated with a planet. We also know that the moon is going around the stars, and it's in a different nakshatra roughly every day. I mean, depending on how fast the moon is moving, it takes a longer or shorter, and every nakshatra has a different quality. So some nakshatras are good for marriages, some are good for travel, some are good for staying at home and meditating. The Tithi is the lunar day in relation to the new moon, full moon cycle. Those have specific qualities to them. Karna is half of one of those days. And the yoga is the specific, there's 27, what they call yogas, which is a sun moon angle. And every 13 degrees and 20 minutes between the sun and moon, that's a specific thing. So all of these have different meanings. And for those of you that don't live in India, you know, in the West, we get ephemerises, which are, you know, look like this, and they just have the planetary positions. But if we had a Panchang, it would actually give us the, you know, when the moon's nakshatra, the Tithi, and all this stuff, so we could look it up easily. Our softwares all do this, and I'll actually talk about software in a bit. What I am gonna kind of focus on is, so one of my teachers, and I forget who to credit this with, but they said, you know, often Muhurta is about picking the least bad time, because in the world of picking dates, you're usually, you know, if someone's opening, say, a donut shop, which is a, maybe I should use a more culturally neutral thing. Let's say you're opening up a clothing store and you want, but it's got to open between, you know, 9 and 5, and it probably doesn't make sense to open it 5 minutes before 5, and it has to be during, let's say, you know, Monday through Friday, and it has to be during a certain time period because you need customers in to start making money. So you give these parameters to the astrologer, and then they try to find the best time given whatever limitations you are under. And often you're just trying to find the best time of the available time to get as much astrological blessing on whatever it is you're electing for. Does that concept make sense? Or again, pipe in with a question anywhere, and we will try to answer them. All right. So planetary days of the week. So, so the principle I was going to say is if you can just get one thing in really good condition, you're off to a great start. So even Saturday, if something has to open on a Saturday, even though that's ruled by Saturn, if Saturn's in good condition and it's well placed in the chart, that's good. And then you can, you know, go from there to add more things to it. The nakshatras, which again, I'm going to assume this audience that knows what those are. They're the lunar mansions. They're the little star constellations, of which there's 27 of them around the ecliptic. They can be broken. There's 27 of them, and they can be broken into these broad categories I have here. And this is information that is available probably all over the internet and in almost every Jyotish book that you can buy. It will give you this kind of information. And this is sort of they're numbering them from the first one to the 27th. The next slide I have. So you want to pick a good nakshatra ideally, because that's going to be what helps like feed and grow whatever it is you're trying to do. Here is a little more detail. And again, I'm just exposing you to this idea. This information is relatively easy to find. Don't feel like you have to, you know, write all this down, but you can just see how certain nakshatras, here we have Rohini, which is in sidereal Taurus. It's good for healing, marriage, legal matters. Several are good for travel. Here's Hasta, you know, so here are the things. And if you're just a beginner in this and you don't really know a whole lot of astrology, you can easily look up what nakshatra the moon is in and at least get this on your side, you know. Or if you're a Western astrologer and there's just no good time, you can dip into this. But again, remember to use the sidereal zodiac, because that's how we're measuring these nakshatras. And then you can, you know, pick one of these. The tithis also have their meaning. I can't remember where I got this particular information from, but again, this is very commonly available. The first day after the new moon is good for planning only. And then again, travel and different topics that are common to our life on Earth are spread out over the tithis. And one teacher I had said the difference, so because often you're kind of combining these things and it's like, well, how do you combine it? So he taught that the nakshatras sort of infused whatever it was, whether it's a marriage or a business opening or whatever, infused it with, you know, the energy of becoming and how it's going to grow into whatever it's going to become. And the tithis affect more, how are you feeling about it? How is this affecting you? You know, because you can open up a business and the business can do great, and you could be miserable because you underestimated the time it was going to take, or you thought it was going to be a different experience than it was. And so having the right tithi can also kind of increase the happiness factor around whatever the event is or thing is that you're trying to do. So here's that list. Now, I have an Android phone, and there is a wonderful, because people always say, well, how do I look this stuff up easily? I have an Android phone, and there's a great free app called Jyotish app. And it will you can set it for where you are, and it will give you all this information, you know, what the tithi is, what nakshatra the moon is in, what time it's in that nakshatra, and all these, and the planetary day and the planetary hour. I didn't really talk about that, but every hour is also associated with a planet. And you can dial that into your thinking. You know, if you want to, you know, I don't know, buy a gift for a loved one, you know, you might want to do that on Venus Day or in a Venus hour on Jupiter Day or something like that, you know, so you can use your knowledge of astrology to look at the days of the week and the hours. But this will also, by the way, does Rashi charts, natal charts for you, and does a whole bunch of stuff. So it's very generous offering to the world. It's absolutely free. There's no in-app purchases. And it's been great. There may be something like that in the Apple world, but I'm not in that world, so I can't guide you on that. Now, another principle of Muhurta, and this really isn't a Muhurta class because I don't want to spend more than half of my time going over this really basic stuff, and because I think it'll be more fun to look at charts. But one of the principles is that, you know, an election or an opening of a business or a wedding date, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's an interaction between the owner of the business or the two people getting married and that moment. So the next kind of very easy principle, even if you don't know any of this, even if you're coming to this from Western astrology and you don't really understand all this Indian stuff, here's something you can do. Actually, the next three things are things that there's two things you can do. One of them requires a little bit of Indian astrology, and that's Tara Bala, Chandra. This means strength. Bala means strength. Tara means star. And I'll explain what that is in a minute. And then I'm going to tell you about Chandra Bala, and then we're going to go over Abhijit Muhurta, which is like if absolutely nothing works and you have to do something, this is kind of what we would say in the West is a Hail Mary. There is an auspicious time that happens almost every day that you can piggyback on. So Tara Bala, I should probably just skip because it's going to take me too long to explain it. But the basic principle is when you were born, your moon was in a certain nakshatra, and every day the moon is in another nakshatra. And where is that moon in relationship to the moon when you were born? This will give you a kind of rough and ready picture of sort of the condition of your moon on a certain day. Now, don't panic, and if you do this and tomorrow is a day where the transiting moon is in one of the seven nakshatras from when you were born, you know, don't think, oh, I'm gonna have a difficult day, I better stay home. You know, you don't want to put too much weight on any one thing. And the last thing I want to do is to increase fear in today's world. So this is just a subtle factor. It's a little icing on the cake, but it's something you can do. You can look at if you're wanting to do something. And basically the way you would do this is you would just, and again, this is really common information. You could probably Google Tara Bala. There's probably websites on it. You would put your birth nakshatra here, whatever number that is. And then I would recommend you just number down till you get to 27, then start at 1. And then you'll have your little grid here. And then with your app or your software, you can look to see what nakshatra the moon is and track Tara Bala. But something that's even easier than that. Whoops, I went backwards, not forwards. Even easier than that is the moon and the houses. So you know what house your moon is in. I mean, if you're here, then you must have you must have some astrological knowledge, and you probably know where the moon is in your chart, and you know what house it's in. It's in 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 12, right? So wherever your moon is, let's say it's in the 12th house, you want to count. Let's make this easy. So let's say your moon is in Aries. So that means when the transiting moon is in Virgo, it's 6 houses away, right? Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, 6th house, right? In Indian astrology, if you're not from around here, we use whole sign houses. Whatever degree is rising, whatever sign that's in, the whole sign becomes the house. And you want to use that. This actually comes from B.V. Raman, and he may have got it from somewhere else, but this is where I was first exposed to this idea. 6, 8, and 12 are the difficult houses, right? So it makes sense, a kind of intuitive sense, that maybe you don't want to start something when the transiting moon is 6 houses, 8 houses, or 12 houses away from your natal moon. And that would be 6 signs, 8 signs, or 12 signs away from your natal sign, to make it even easier. So this is a real easy principle that anyone can do, even if you don't want to fool with all the stuff I've talked about prior to that. Okay. Oh, I'm good. I think I'm going to make my half hour here. Now, let's say you absolutely have to do something. Your Western astrologer has said there's just no good time to do it. Sorry. And you can't reach your Indian astrologer on the phone to give you an alternative. You remembered some things about this little talk, and all of it doesn't look good. But it has to be done. Like, you have to do it tomorrow. Well, that's where Abhijit Muhurta comes in. Now, there are a lot of things in Indian astrology and Vedic astrology that are called Abhijit. This isn't the nakshatra. This is a unit of time. It's a Muhurta. I didn't really talk about Muhurta on the first time slide, but it's a segment of about 48 minutes. But it actually depends on Muhurta is being used kind of loosely here, and it depends on the time of the year, which I'll explain in a minute, the actual amount of time you have. But this Abhijit Muhurta, it's the most favorable. They say that anything you do will meet with success, and that it neutralizes other unfavorable astrological factors. Now, those of you that have been studying for a while know how to interpret that. But those of you who are tuning in and are new, often things are said in the Indian astrological literature that are a little stronger than they actually appear in real life. And so I wouldn't say that this alone makes every problem go away, but it is better than nothing, and it is something that you can do. And it's very simple. All you have to do is you have to find true solar noon. This is when the sun is at the highest point in the sky. If you've got an app that tells you the planetary hours, this will be the very beginning of the 7th planetary hour. Also coincides with the sun being highest in the sky, assuming that you're treating the day hours separate from the night. I know there's a school of thought that just takes 24 hours and divides that, but if you're more commonly taking the daylight hours and dividing that into 12 units of time, and the night and dividing that into 12 units of time, you just, to find where the sun is, it's going to be the beginning of that 7th, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, beginning of the 7th hour. That's kind of a cheat way of doing it. If you have software, you can just look for when the sun if you're a Western astrologer, when the sun conjuncts the midheaven, or Google it, and it will, what is true solar noon at my town, and it will tell you. It's basically when the sun is at the highest point of the sky. That is the middle of the Abhijit Muhurta time, and it begins approximately 24 minutes before that time, and it will go approximately 24 minutes after that time, although that time will shift depending on the time of the year and the latitude. So to be safe, what I've done is I've looked up what Abhijit Muhurta is. I'm in the Northern Hemisphere, So on December 21st, that's the shortest day of the year in San Diego. And I looked to see what the Abhijit Muhurta time is. And I know that it will never be shorter than that time. So that even if I have nothing around and I'm walking around and I need to do something, or I need to, someone's asking me for some free advice on the street, I at least know that that window of time is going to be good. And any other time of the year, it's going to be slightly wider. I then have kind of a complicated explanation of how to do this, but this is not the place for that. So you can look it up easy enough. So this is great. You can, anytime that you absolutely need something, you can do it at around true solar noon, and you will get this Abhijit Muhurta. However, there is, I never put this in, you guys, you should have said start the slideshow. Okay, so there is one exception to this, and that is it doesn't work on Wednesdays. If you absolutely have to do something on Wednesday and everything is quote unquote bad astrologically, you can't even use Abhijit Muhurta. It's you just have to use your free will and your gumption to power forward. And the reason why it doesn't work on Wednesday is there is another piece of time that has a very challenging quality, and it moves around on different days, and it actually eclipses the Abhijit Muhurta on Wednesday. And so the literature says it sort of counteracts Abhijit. So Wednesday is the one day of the week where this doesn't fly. Okay. It's 1 minute to 7 here, Pacific local time. And now I just want to look at charts. I want all of us to look at charts, and I want this to be interactive so we can talk about it. And we're going to look at a few. I apologize. This first slide is just in South Indian, but everything else will have South Indian and North Indian chart styles to make it easier for you. So if you're a North Indian chart style enthusiast, simply copy, take a minute. These are basically the same charts. So I was hired by a client who does a kind of therapy, and she wanted to, she was going to do a weekend of continuing education. So here in America, certain professions require that you get continuing education hours. Probably the same in India with things like medical and stuff like that. It's so you like stay on top of your game and you know what's happening in the field. So in her field, there was a certain amount of continuing education that was needed. And she decided that she was gonna like organize her own thing. So we had already elected her submission of the application to the state, and she had gotten approval and was ready to go. And like many clients, she first said, okay, it can be like any weekend in October or the first 2 weeks of November. And then as I started working on it, she was like, oh, no, I can't do, actually, these other weekends don't work, blah, blah. And so at the end of the day, it ended up being, it could be like November 2nd or November 3rd. I can start it Friday morning or Saturday morning. It's got to be, and that was the choice. It was this or this. When I was first starting doing this, I remember the very first, I couldn't find it to pull it up, but the story's funnier than the chart anyway. So I was hired by this couple to find a wedding day, and they said, we really want to get good astrological influences on the wedding. So really it can be June, July, or August, and it can be Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and it can be, any reasonably convenient time during the day. They didn't want it to be 9 a.m., but they could do a 1 p.m. wedding. They were willing to do whatever it takes. So I worked on this and I found things, and I said, okay, I got 2 options for you that are really good. And I forget the details, but let's just say the options were like the last weekend in June and maybe the middle of July. And they're like, oh no, we can't. Turns out we can't do June or July because of family stuff. it has to be August. I'm like, okay, I'll let me go back. I'll find something in August. So I find some dates in August, and they're like, oh no, we can't do those. It has to be between these 2 weekends, and it has to actually be on a Saturday, and it has to be between this narrow time window. Now, normally that wouldn't be a problem, but I had quoted a price at the front end of this, and now I'm doing like the labor over and over again. So it taught me, when you work with clients, to be very specific and to probe and ask them questions like, okay, you're giving me this wide, especially with weddings. Really, the family can come on any day of the week, blah, blah, blah. And often they'll be like, oh no, you're right. And then they'll narrow it down, because the less time you have, in some ways, the easier it is, but in some ways it's more challenging. So here we go. Here we have, it was narrowed down to, given the place she was renting, and how many hours she needed to do this, we really only had 2 options. One was a Friday and one was a Saturday. This is the Friday chart. The one on the right is the Saturday chart. And this is what we had to work with. For those of you that are Western astrologers, these 2 little lines tell us that Libra was rising. The way you read a South Indian chart is that Aries is always in this box, and you go clockwise around to Pisces here. So Aries, Taurus, blah, blah, blah. Hope maybe you can see the tiny little abbreviations thing. So I know this might be challenging, but the Indian people out there will hopefully be able to read this. So basically we have a Friday with Sun in Libra with Saturn, or we have a Saturday with Scorpio rising with Mars, Mercury, and Rahu there. The point is, of course, she wants to make money, and it's a continuing education, and she wants to, attract people to her event. So how would you approach this? And let's interact. I'm just checking the live chat questions, of which there are none. Wow, you guys are shy. Do I have to?
I'll start. I am so ignorant on this subject, but I just hate Venus in Virgo in the 12th house for Friday. So I'm going to go with Saturday. Sorry, okay. To make money. And now, I'm also not nuts about the 8th house moon on Friday.
Oh yeah, by the way, Muhurta 101 is you want an empty 8th house, which is impossible. It's impossible with what our constraints were. So again, often in the field, you're dealing with these kind of constraints. Okay, sorry, it sounded like someone was going to say something.
I think Lynn has something good to say.
I was looking, I guess I was put off with Ardra Nakshatra, unless I was trying to hold some sort of very cathartic, rolfing session or something, something very 60s,
Right. And to Scott's point, with Saturday, you have Saturn in the 12th. So this notion of the ruler being in the 12th, this is also interesting. Sometimes the client's karma kind of affects things, and they give you these ranges, and you realize that, okay, a big difference is Venus in Virgo is going to be debilitated and Saturn in Libra is going to be exalted. So there's that kind of qualitative difference. But that notion of having the ruler the first in the 12th is kind of inescapable. Now, maybe you could kind of justify that given the nature that it's like a helping profession, and it has to do with, going into the mind. I mean, usually we throw that stuff in the 8th house, but anyway, okay. Think, people are now Ardra Nakshatra.
I suggest that we choose the second chart because at least the ascendant Lord is in the ascendant. So the ascendant is stronger here compared to the chart on the left. It's almost like choosing the lesser of 2 evils here.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. And that is often the position you're in when you're doing this. And remember, I was taught, just try to find one thing that can be good. And you did that. You're right. With Scorpio rising, we have Mars. Why is it doing that? We have Mars and Scorpio. So at the very least, we at least have the Lugna Lord in good dignity. Now it's with Mercury, who rules the 8th house, and the style of therapy that she does, it would fall into the 8th house. So it's not, to me, it was kind of describing, kind of describing the event. And Mercury ruling the 8th and the 11th, being in the first, it might, for this particular, genre of therapy, might be a good match. And, with Scorpio rising, we also have Jupiter ruling the 2nd and the 5th house. So those are two money houses. It's here in the 7th. So people are going to be like signing up, and it is getting the aspect of that. So, I mean, does anyone want to make a case for Friday as being a better chart? And
I could, yeah. I mean, I was thinking. So one is that I think if you take the Friday, then Saturn will get a very nice Nicha Bhanga Raj Yoga because it is in the Lagna, right? You also have the exalted 10th Lord in the 8th house. So because you're looking at profession and you're looking at the healing or medical profession, I think, and the 10th Lord going to 8th is not that bad. So you lose Moon's exaltation in the other chart on the Saturday chart, and you lose Saturn's Nicha Bhanga. Oh, sorry, the Saturn is not Nicha Bhanga. Saturn is Sun's Nicha Bhanga. Sorry.
So actually, a couple of other points, if I may.
Yep.
Moon is well past its exaltation point. It's almost at the end there. It's no longer at the exaltation point. I think I read that as almost 27 degrees. So this exaltation in my mind doesn't work. But on the other hand, for Saturday, if you look at the 7th house from the ascendant, you have Jupiter. Even though it's with Ketu, it's fairly far off. It's 2 degrees versus 21. And having Jupiter in a partnership house helps, because she's not going to make this money on her own. She needs help from the client or whosoever her partners are. And Jupiter is the Lord of the 2nd house of Dhanasthana and the 5th house of learning, luck, or whatever you want to call it. So that is okay. On the negative side, this Mars-Mercury combination in the ascendant creates deception in some form. It's not exactly lying, but these people are able to present themselves a little better than the real situation is. And maybe that's marketing that she needs. So I'm looking at that bad aspect between Mars and Mercury as something helpful to this business. Anyway, I'll stop talking.
So I want to pass on to my other examples. I don't exactly remember which of these two I picked. I think it was Saturday for the reasons you mentioned. And plus I know a little bit more about what this therapy is in quotes. And this chart seemed to be a little more dialed in to that. However, I get a call from her, like I guess days before the thing. And she's like, no one is signed. I only have like 6 people signed up, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh geez, like I let me relook at the charts. Maybe maybe I'm a bad, I'm thinking, oh God, I'm a bad astrologer. This was supposed to be a success. And then as she's on the phone and I'm pulling up my software, she casually tells me, oh, well, there's a big national annual conference happening 30 miles away that's doing the same thing I'm trying to do. And I was like, whoa, pause the story. You're meaning to tell me that there's a big annual conference that's 30 miles away in the big town that you live outside of? She's like, yeah. And I said, well, wouldn't everyone be going to that instead of you? So this is where no amount of astrology would have helped her situation, I don't think, because it would be like, I'm going to teach astrology this weekend, and 20 miles up the road is a huge international gathering of astrologers. Like, anyone that wants to know anything is going to be going to that. So you do have to like take into common sense. And the reason why I threw this example up was because it was, again, another learning for me that you really need, like, you don't know what you don't know. And that was like a key crucial thing. I mean, if she had called me up and said, I want to do it, I can only do it this weekend, but I'm worried because there's a big international thing happening 20 miles up the road, I would have been like, we don't need astrology to answer this. Don't do it this weekend, push it out till, next year or whatever, because it's not, you're just not going to compete with that.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was working on this, it's opening a dance studio. I mean, this woman's lifetime dream, we're kind of settled on a weekend, and then I go, oh my God, this is the opening of the Gathering Place Park that's bigger than Central Park in Tulsa. It's like, fortunately she hadn't printed anything yet, but yeah, all that work, forget it. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, our job as astrologers, there's a fair amount that's common sense. And don't forget that, because we're also human beings in addition to being astrologers. And so whatever we can bring to the table to help the client. All right. So
there's one factor that I always look at that is not shown here. Each one of these charts will show in the Mahadasha. It will start in the Mahadasha. So the one on the right is starting in Rahu, and Rahu is debilitated in the first house with the 6th Lord and the 8th Lord. That would be like a big no to me.
Yeah.
I always make sure that the first Mahadasha is one that at least plays a favorite role in the chart. Otherwise, you may have a lot of goodies, but which one gets activated for the lifespan of this event?
Yes. And for the senior Jyotishis in there, absolutely. I mean, I didn't know who was going to be here, so I cut out. Like Michiel says, I look at that too. And yes, the Navamsha is also something, the 9th divisional chart, with little changes in time, you can get a good Navamsha. And I always do that as well. So yes, there's don't think that what I have taught in the very little time we've had is the be all end all. There's a lot more there. And these are ways you can adjust even what seemed to be, okay, it's not so great in the Rashi, but maybe I can get a good Navamsha out of this. Those are things you absolutely, and there's a whole slew of other things that you can look at too. I'm going to skip the construction one because that's not particularly interesting, but let's look at this. Now, I did not play a role in this chart, but my friend excuse me, for some reason my mouse is, I'll just not touch anything. Okay. This was a business startup. It was in 2009, and it was an internet. It was a marketing company, but they were using internet and web design and bringing people that had who was involved in a profession that hadn't really gotten fluent with the World Wide Web. And so their whole forte was like, hey, we're going to help you and build you a business site and get you out there on the web. And they were very astrology friendly, and they hired Western astrology. I think they hired some Western astrologers, elected a time for them to start this business. We are looking at that now through the same time, day, and place, but through the eyes of sidereal astrology. If these numbers are too small for you to read, this is Aries here. It's Aries rising in the North Indian chart. So I thought we could look at this and see, not if we would have picked this or not, but just what we think the fate of, because now many, many years have gone by, and I know I was able to watch this company, and what might we think happens here? So we have Aries rising. Here we have Mars in the 9th house with the sun. Go to it. Maybe someone who hasn't said anything yet, who's normally shy. Look, there's no judgment here. And the only way you learn astrology is by doing. So don't be afraid. Okay, you can be afraid, but also be afraid and still step up. You know, when I'm teaching class, when people are too shy, I'll just roll a dice, and whatever number comes up, I'll count that many names down and call someone out. Not that I want to put anyone on the spot, but surely someone wants to say something here. Okay, well, I'll talk about yes.
The talky people. We'll talk. How's that? I agree with Charlotte.
Charlotte likes it. Yeah. Okay.
I think
let's just talk a little bit about it. So we have Aries rising. Mars is in the 9th house. That's a good house for the rising, the Lugna Lord to be. Mars rules the 1st and the 8th, and it's in the 9th. It's with the sun who rules the 5th. That's pretty good. The 10th house has Jupiter, Mercury, Rahu. Remember, Rahu often rules kind of cutting edge technology. And at the time, the technology wasn't so cutting edge, but they were reaching a new market that hadn't really been reached before. Mercury rules.
Also, the 9th Lord is in the 10th house.
Yes, the 9th Lord Jupiter is in the 10th house. It is Capricorn, and that does debilitate Jupiter. So maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. What do you all think? Venus rules the 2nd and the 11th. You know, this was a business where they were going to cultivate clients, hiring them. So ruler the 7th and the 11th. You're having a benefic there. That seems like it might be good for getting clients.
But again, I think Jupiter being in the Kendra and then Jupiter in Navamsha seems to be going to Pisces will give it a good Nicha Bhanga.
Yep.
Right. And then, like you said, Mercury Rahu combination in the 10th house, Mercury being communications and it's a marketing company, and Rahu being innovation. I would think it's a good Muhurta for them.
Yeah. Mahil, have you calculated the dasha for this moon position?
It's Manika Shira, right? Mars?
Yeah. So, and we got Mars here in the 9th house.
Is fine. I would be a bit concerned about the 12th Lord and the 6th Lord in the 10th in terms of.
So Jupiter is also the 12th Lord. Let's not forget about that. And Mercury rules the 6th. Okay, so what happened was the thing disintegrated within a year or two. I'm not saying we can see that necessarily from the chart. I pulled this up as an example of life is more complicated than just picking a good Muhurta. So the partners sort of went in different directions. The guy that was the people that were supposed to do the tech end were not at all keeping pace with what they said they were. And so the marketing people felt like they were like selling lies to people. And the whole thing, if it lasted 3 years, I'm being generous with my memory. I mean, I don't think it lasted 2. And it just, but they made a big splash, and they went out and they had some capital, and they blew through it all. And it was an absolute failure. Probably we needed to look at the charts of the people actually involved, because when you have a partnership, that's real important to look at the partners' charts. And they were favorably received, but they just couldn't quite get their act together to deliver. So I'm not saying we would see that obviously in this chart, because that Western astrologer in the tropical system obviously saw something good, and we're seeing good things here. But you need more. If you're lazy and you hate to work and you want to open a business where you're repairing things, you can have the best chart in the world, but if you hate your job every day, that's probably going to take its toll, So, life is complicated, and this is where we bring it. The subtitle of this talk was Free Will and the Limits of Astrology. It was as a top. We don't often talk about the limits of astrology, because we, as astrologers, we act as if everything rises and falls on what we can see in charts. But I would argue that simply isn't the case. And here's an example where it's not an unreasonable election for a business, but it just completely and utterly failed.
But Kenneth, to do a proper chart reading, you also have to look from the moon, and then you have the Lord of the first and the eighth. You have two malefics in the seventh house, including the sixth, which is really bad for partnerships.
Yep.
When you properly read a chart as if this was a natal chart, you would definitely see a lot of potential troubles that could lead to those specific problems that you indicated.
Yeah, no, we definitely see that.
Blowing money, the 12th lord debilitated in the 10th, with the 6th lord could indicate bad decisions being made about spending publicly.
Yes.
Overspending, because it is Jupiter, indiscriminately. And then the Rahu can add some overexcitement to it and rash decisions.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So from the moon, we actually could have predicted all that stuff. Thank you, Michiel, for reminding us that, yes, you always want to, at a minimum, and of course, we don't have the Navamsha, this is stripped away to just the basics, because I feel like this isn't quite as freewheeling as it should be, but whatever. Hope if you guys are all enjoying yourself, then mission accomplished. But if you have a question, step up. So we're almost done with the hour. So here's a kind of fun one. This is what I call an accidental Muhurta. So I know a couple who the female is a Western astrologer, and she noted the time of their first date. Now this happened, I think, like about almost 3 years ago, and so I always try to collect the stories and collect the times. So here is in the sidereal zodiac the moment of two people, a heterosexual San Diego couple, or Southern California couple, and this was the Muhurta of their first date. I call it accidental because she didn't elect this. This was just, she had the mind to look at the time when she arrived for the first date. So let's see if Muhurta can tell us, did it go beyond one date? Did it what happened? Because it's been a couple of years now. So I have a story that we can match with this. So who hasn't said anything? We got Capricorn rising, Moon K2 in the first. That means Rahu's going to be in the 7th in Cancer. We have Jupiter, Mars in Libra, which is the 10th house. We have Mercury in the 11th. We have Saturn, Sun, and Venus in Sag. We could just stare at each other and like do a staring meditation, but it might be more fun.
I love that.
You can type something in the chat box if you're too shy to unmute
Okay,
yourself.
well, I'm gonna dive in, and I just wonder about the Lugna Lords being Saturn in the 12th.
Yeah.
With Sun and Venus. This just doesn't sound like a fun thing.
Actually, I think Rahu in the 7th, because this is a first date, so I'm mostly concentrating on the 7th house. And Rahu in the 7th house tells me there was infatuation in this particular case. And Rahu could even imply Melch, meaning a foreigner in this case, or some difference between this person and her date, either cultural or some other difference because of Rahu.
So for those in the audience that are in India or faraway places, and you can tell me if this is true there, but here I've noticed in America, you know, which is a big I mean, it's just a big amount of space, and it's got distinctive cultural norms in different areas. And so sometimes Rahu in the 7th literally means a foreigner, like someone from another country. But I've found that it sometimes means that the New Yorker falls in love with a Californian, that it's someone from a different culture. And so that's just another way to read it. It can also mean, you know, someone who's like electrical engineer or some kind of cutting edge technology. You know, there's a lot of, you know, you look up Rahu, there's a lot of meanings, but it often does literally mean foreigner. I mean, I'm surprised at how often that actually manifests. But I have found in the US, it sometimes can mean, you know, the New Yorker marries the Southern person, because that is another distinct region with its own culture here. So it doesn't always mean a literal foreigner. Okay, that was just a little aside to people. Okay. Yes.
Well, since this is a couple, who's the first house? Would it be the person who took note of the time?
I would say the first house is the date. Remember, this is if they had planned it, they would have said, okay, I really like this person. Let's pick an auspicious time to have our first date, which will then like cast a glow on whatever's to come later. But they didn't do that. This is like I said, accidental Muhurta. They just met, and we're looking at the quality of that moment. However, that's my opinion. Maybe someone else wants to answer your question in a different way.
So you mean it's just the date itself?
Yes.
You know, well, one thing I see in this maybe, the 12th, the Venus in the 12th, and Jupiter in over here, they're exchanging signs, and it involves the 12th house. So there might have been a whole lot of sexual attraction there.
Yep.
Yeah.
For the Western astrologers out there, in Indian astrology, we do put the pleasures of the bed in the 12th house. That's a principle of Indian astrology. And yes, there is an exchange here, a Parivartana yoga between Venus and Jupiter.
Yeah. And then with that Rahu in the 7th, that would add to that.
Yep. No one said, well, where did they meet? Maybe they met at an ashram or some 12th house place, but no, it was like a coffee shop.
What's the K? How would you read the K2 in the first? That's interesting to me.
Here, moon is affected with all negative planets. Moon is affected with Rahu, Ketu. In between Papakatari, Saturn and Ketu, Mars is looking the moon. So mind is disturbed, whatever happens after that. Moon is affected with all negative planets.
Yes. So everyone follow that. So Mars is on the nodal axis, so it's being influenced by Rahu and Ketu. Mars is throwing its 4th house aspect. It's also got Saturn on the other side and Ketu on this side.
Thank you.
2 natural malefics. Just want to read the comments here. I don't like movable sign rising along. Now I'm reading from Sarah, but hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. I also don't like the movable sign rising. Okay, Capricorn, right. When we want something long lasting, we usually don't choose a movable sign. Rahu in the 7th, Venus in the 12th, 2 malefics, pretty destabilizing, along with Mars aspecting Yeah, Mars aspecting the first house. Yep. Mars in this chart rules the 4th and the 11th, and it's in the 10th. Let me check over here. Rahu moon is blurter. They found themselves blurting things out to each other. Ooh, I should check that. I don't actually know for sure if that happened. Very aggressive. Not sure if they have the patience for the long run. Okay, that's a good comment. Oh, we're actually 3 minutes over, by the way. So I will wrap this up and tell you what happened. I can stay for a few minutes if there's additional questions, but if you have to leave, I want to respect your time, and I thank you for being here. And those of you that are participating in Jyotish Mela, I'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, bright and early my time for when it starts. Okay, so yeah, there's quite a few challenging things here. What actually happened is they had a first date. They did have a second date. It took a few weeks for that to happen because of schedules and stuff, but I think like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later at the most, they had a second date. They continued dating, and they are ostensibly a happy couple still dating even today. Although what was interesting is they took things very slow by Western standards. So, the tip, in America, we're a serial monogamy culture, and often physical intimacy comes into play relatively soon, but they attenuated that, and they really sort of took their time to get to know each other beyond what would be quote unquote culturally normal around here. So I thought that was interesting. And they were both, this is very important when you're dealing with relationships, they are both, by my estimation, emotionally mature people. And that can make all the difference with how some of these factors are handled. And of course, this is the first date. They had a first meeting chart, but no one knew what that chart was. That might actually take precedence over this. When you're getting together with someone, you layer all these, there's the first meeting, there's the first date, there's the first kiss, there's all these layerings of things that go. There's the moment where, okay, let's be a committed couple. Again, that's a Western thing, let's be committed with each other. So you have all these different charts kind of, adding their effects. And for all I know, the first meeting chart was like really auspicious, but I think
this is
they're
a big
mature.
question in Muhurta. People often ask, what time should they consider the Muhurta for? That's a question before actually picking a chart.
Yep.
So let's say a person wants to incorporate. Is it the time that the shareholders agreement is signed, or is it the time of incorporation, or is it the time that the preliminary decision is being made?
Yep.
So I think the question is always, is there a time where something is truly born?
Yes.
And for a birth, there needs to be a commitment.
Yeah.
The baby could go back in the womb because after a week he decides it was nicer inside. The birth wouldn't really mean anything, but it is that the baby starts breathing, and once it starts breathing, the way the arteries run through the body, it shifts, and there's an irreversible change that makes it not you cannot go back in time. So a first date may not actually be an occasion that is representing anything irreversible, but that depends. If this was a monumental, if this was a time that for the first time they confessed love for each other, maybe it was irreversible. But if it wasn't, then the chart may not be so relevant.
Yeah, and I'll also say that one of the things that characterizes both these people is they are quote unquote spiritual people. Now that might sound a funny thing to some of you, but again, I'm in Southern California. There's a lot of a-religious and atheistic people, and people that don't give the time of day. I mean, I have clients that fall into this category. They're very nominally religious or spiritual, but they see a utility to astrology, so they allow that into their lives. But that would describe some of my business clients. But this was definitely a couple that had kind of 12th house things in common. So that, again, that might have allowed them to, view the first date as something that was a, pleasant experience and worth continuing.
Would a great marriage elected chart, let's say they had a crummy first meeting. I mean, like, this is a fate and free will question. If you keep doing electional charts, would a great marriage chart overpower a bad first date chart?
I think so. And I think that was to Michiel's point. Like, you're making a commitment, that is the birth of something,
Yes.
Once you are married, now, if you change your mind, there's a whole legal entanglement you have to undo. Just like when you give birth, oh, I don't want this child, I have to give it up for adoption. That changes your parenting status. It doesn't, the child still was born. So I think, and a first date is more ephemeral. So we would expect that chart not to be the be all end all, because again, we have a first meeting chart that may have happened already. There may be a chart for when the date was set, like they somehow decided, let's have a first date, and there would be a chart for that moment, right? So again, it's like all these little things, but getting married, that's really on. And then you might make a case for if you made like a real serious commitment, something that really changed the nature of the game. But with marriage, it's like, you can't back out. You can be divorced, but you can't erase the legal status of marriage from your past. It is there.
I think someone on YouTube had a burning question for you, Kenneth.
Okay, so I'm not really tracking the YouTube stuff, but let me try to find what
a medical practitioner, I believe.
So can you just read to me her question?
I don't have it.
Oh, okay. Hold on. By the way, the chart we're looking at now was the beginning of this talk, from my point of view, San Diego. And, I looked at this and I saw Aquarius rising, Saturn's in the 12th. And boy, most of you were very quiet, hidden. So I guess I wasn't able to quite remediate that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed and got something out of this. And it certainly was a pleasure to talk about it. I think the next time I do something like this, we'll just do the topic of free will and the limits of astrology and have a more philosophical discussion, because I think we got well into the astrology, which was great. Not so much the other topics. But again, I'll stay around and let me see if I can find. Can you maybe just repeat your question so it pops up on the bottom of the YouTube thing, Dr. Bell? And I will do my best to answer it. I'm not seeing it.
I think there were comments, but I did not see any questions.
Yeah, I don't see any questions.
Right.
Yeah.
There were comments for sure.
Yeah,
and
lots of
good comments. Yeah.
Extravagant love affair that burns out quick. Yeah, so you don't want to overread the first date chart, because it ended up, and maybe they sensed that was a possibility, and that's why they slowed things down. So who knows? But okay, someone thought it was very informative. Well, good. If at least one person thought that, thank you, kind person.
2 people. 2.
It was fun to put this together.
It was great, Kenneth. It was great.
This Muhurta chart for this meeting could be recognizing that this is an event through an ashram. The ruler of the first is.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a serious ashram.
And also we've been
New Age ashram. It's a real ashram. Yeah.
Here in America, maybe we are talked out.
No, but it's it's a very substantial ashram. It's not a new agey thing,
I just realized I do know what Dr. Bell's question is. It just has nothing to do with the topic tonight. So I have just remembered that, and I will get back to you with an appropriate answer. I'm just writing myself a note to do this. Okay, mystery solved.
And see, the seventh house ruler is in the 8th. Well, we're all here for astrology. I think this is a good number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought, well, people are going to show up. Moon's in the 9th house, so there'll be someone here. So that'll be good. And I mean, I normally put myself in a state of service. I mean, I'm really here to serve you. That's why they have me doing this hour. So hopefully I've done that and honored Venus's here in the 6th house.
That's very good.
Yeah, and I would say that one thing I've noticed that you get, sometimes you find that there's a period coming up when it looks like all sorts of things would go better. And when I see a month like that, I do take the opportunity to let my friends who organize things, give them a little heads up that, hey, June of 2021, it looks pretty darn good, just, if you're thinking of something, start thinking about that month.
Well, and that's really our job. I'll just throw up my contact information here. That's our job as astrologers, hopefully to be more prescriptive, because if you know the planetary influences, then you can make conscious choice. And this is where we're getting with the interaction of astrology and free will. If you can consciously make space for Mars's transit, you can, rather than being like blindsided by it because you don't know anything about astrology and suddenly you're getting into fights and arguing with people, if we can have some choice into how the grahas express through us, that's the beauty of being an astrologer, is that we help our clients hopefully to do that. Now maybe I'm being overly optimistic. That's American optimism, but that's what I like to see.
I will definitely add to that, Kenneth. It was a very, very interactive session. So, which is really lovely. That was a part of overall the session is being interactive. And the examples was very nice. Everybody was participating so well. And even we can see a very beautiful comment coming in the YouTube as well. So, lovely session. So if we are ready, we will definitely go towards the closing mantra and we will conclude the session. So Rani ji, are you there? So,
I enjoyed it a lot, Kenneth, although I didn't interact. I really enjoyed it. I liked the way everyone was analyzing things. And if I may add, just for a moment, the last chart about the first date, I thought that all the planets were in the Vyakta, that is the visible portion of the chart.
Yeah.
And that made it very, and I think the Mercury was in the 11th house. That made it very, they communicated a lot. They visibly put everything on the table is what I would have said. And I found that Ketu being with the moon gave them that maturity that you were saying, that although there's a lot of physicalist attraction, I thought Ketu being with the moon gave them that detachment to be spiritually or mature, emotionally mature.
Yep.
And
I didn't mention their age. This first date might have played out really different if I was talking about two 22-year-olds. They were older.
In their 30s. Okay.
Yeah, in their late 30s. I think one late 30s, early 40s. But yeah, that's the time range. So most of the planets have, matured by then.
Yeah.
And then they were also emotionally true. I almost called on you, so I'm really glad you spoke up now.
Yeah, I also felt that there's a lot of physical attraction, but it's sustaining attraction. It's not disappearing after a while because there's so much of it from different houses.
Yeah.
So it seemed like with Jupiter being like a benefic with Mars, which is aspecting the Lagna, I felt that it might be a sustaining physical attraction. It's not gonna just
fascinating. Yeah,
die out. I don't know, just my 2 cents. Anyway, thank you so much. A very fascinating and intriguing session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night
you,
or good
Ravi.
morning, everyone. And see you in less than 12
you,
hours.
everyone. Yes. See you guys in the morning. Thank you, everyone who could join today.